We're not here.
Somewhere within our,
Phoenix.
in our state.
Oh,
Just like, I get your hopes up.
Yeah.
He said it before the first snow.
The question is, why have we not voted on it before this?
Here in this.
Okay, folks, it's 4:00, let's open up the board. We'll start with the pledge of allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, I'd like to present Mr. Hal Phillips as a new member of the board to the board and the public. Welcome aboard, Hal.
Thank you.
I know you'll be a fine asset to the airport board. I'm sure you can fill Rocky Phoenix's shoes. He said you could, so that's good. Anyway. Called public comments and personal communications. This is a period of comments for the general public and for the board and staff to present correspondence, communications, and comments. No action may be taken on this matter under this section until it is placed on the agenda. I would like to hold the comments to 3 minutes if we could.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before the public comments, I have some comments, if I might. The board member make comments first.
Certainly, go ahead.
Okay, my comments have to do with our last board meeting, specifically the one where we elected officers. And it's documented in the minutes presented here today, that the chairman turned the meeting over to a non-member to conduct that election. That's not, there's no Robert's rules that allows a non-member to conduct the meeting, to conduct business. A non-member can certainly make presentations to the board or to the public, but a non-member does not conduct the meeting, does not conduct business. So,
I turned it over to the, for clarification, in my mind, I turned it over to the airport manager to conduct the meeting, not as a member, just to.
that's right, and that's not allowed. That's
I'm
business,
not-
that was the business of the board
Yep.
that we conducted, and that should be conducted as any other business of the board by the chairman, should be chaired by the chairman. If the chair wants to recuse himself, he can call upon the vice chair to conduct the meeting, but you don't just pick somebody.
I didn't pick anybody.
You picked a non-member of the board, so,
Well-
and this is not here for discussion, this is my public comments, I'm not gonna
Okay, that's fine.
discuss it.
Thank you for your
Further,
comment.
further, I have more.
Okay,
Further, during the election, we kind of made up the rules, or we didn't, the rules were made up. And they don't conform with Robert's Rules of Order. Specifically, as you recall, the election ended in a tie. There were 2 votes for each candidate, for chairman. What Robert's Rule says is that an officer the only way an officer can be elected is with a majority vote, not by default. So the solution that Roberts specifically and explicitly talks about is continuing to vote, changing the way you vote by paper ballot, by roll call, by whatever, and if necessary, continuing the vote to the next meeting until one of the candidates gets a majority. That's the Robert's Rule. There's no version of Robert's Rules that I've seen that deviates from that. And the point of all this is, I don't wanna redo the election. I think we need to learn from it. Because if we don't go by rules, if we don't have rules that are established and we go by them, then we have no credibility whatsoever.
That's right.
We've got to follow the rules. So we hope that maybe other people take the time, other members take the time to take a glance at Robert's Rules now and make sure that we're conducting our business in accordance with those rules.
Thanks for your comments. I will, look into Robert rules about board meetings and see if all of that is, appropriate.
Again, it's not, I didn't want to have an argument or a discussion, it was just an observation that I made. I should have made it during that meeting, but I didn't. If I did, it would have been a different matter. If I raised it during the meeting, it would have been a point of order. And things may have turned out differently, but I didn't, so what's done is done. We need to learn from it.
You don't care.
Anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I do. I get for him or no? Just regular comments, public comment?
Any comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Deborah Gay, and I have a question. We brought this transloading station back to the airport board. If I remember what the city said to us throughout the whole 6 months that we were fighting with them about this property was said by the mayor that it is not airport land. It is not airport land. So my question, if it is not airport land, what are we all doing here? Voting on land and voting on stuff that the mayor specifically said that this is not airport property. The only stretch of airport property is that little one you guys need to get over to the driveway. So my question to all of you, he's not in here, is if it is not airport property, what are we doing here?
The property is in the airport industrial district, which by county zoning code for this district requires that the airport board perform a site plan review.
And it's in the.
But it's not airport property.
That's correct, it's not part of the airport proper, it's non-aeronautical property, but it is
So
in
it
the
is
airport
airport property,
industrial
so it is
district.
actually airport property, but it's not aeronautical airport property. So in reality, it is airport property.
It's shown
But she
on-
said it's not airport property, so why are we doing a thing on non-airport property?
That's
Because it's
county ordinance for their building department has required that in their ordinance that it's reviewed by the airport board.
It makes no sense to me if it's not a stretch of the airport, then
The building and process,
what building?
any building within the county is regulated by the planning department and the county building. So they don't have to, their regulations are different than city regulations.
So does the county know that it's not airport property?
Yeah,
Yeah,
We've got an ordinance right here in front of me. It's a County Commissioners, Humboldt County, Nevada. It's an ordinance and it's got chapter 7.59, Airport Industrial District, and it designates an ordinance that it is an airport designated district.
so when the whole time we were fighting the mayor about the airport property that you guys had jurisdiction over, or you guys should have had a lot more to say about this property, you should have, because it is actually airport property, cause it's in the industrial, come on, it's either
No,
one way or the other.
It isn't. I know you don't like the answer, but it's the same answer we've given you all the time. It was the city park, city property inside the airport industrial district.
It's
you
city
don't like it
property, it's
inside-
city property inside the airport.
Industrial district.
That's the way it works?
Yes.
It is.
Do you have any other comments? Because it's 4 minutes.
No, I don't.
Okay, and while you're back there, please refrain for any underlying comments. I've listened to you for 4 months make underlying
Oh,
comments.
you haven't heard me
Yes,
make
I
underlying
have.
comments.
Already you
Hey,
did.
Mr. Owens,
That's all.
Mr. Owens, do not do that to me, because I have never come up here and been
Let's-
outrageously rude. Don't go there.
We'll just have due respect for everything.
Yeah, him
Just calm
too.
down.
Him too.
Are there any other public comments at this time? If not,
Yeah, there is.
okay.
Good afternoon. How are you today? Everybody take a breath. I'm good. I'd much rather be fishing,
I hear you.
just saying. For the record, my name is Jamie Nicotera. I'm a Winnemucca resident. I live very close to the airport. And, I wanna thank you guys, first of all, you two, for, helping me learn my rights, helping me be a responsible citizen, and helping me learn, I guess my responsibilities as a property owner. And I wanna thank you for that. I wanna thank you for your time. And, I'm praying for all of us, so whether that applies to you or not. But I just want to get that out of the way first. And I do respect you, and, no matter what you may hear, I'm not a person that likes conflict. I am a very respectful person, and I expect that you treat me the same way that I'm treating you. And I very much appreciate that. Mr. Owens and I have spent a lot of time together trying to, figure some things out, and, I know Mr. Haas very well. I've met Brad a little bit. The poor ladies in the office have just seen me ask for paperwork. I'm just trying to learn a little bit about the situation and what's at hand here. And I feel like that's, my responsibility as a property owner.
Mhm.
So, I know that you've asked for 3 minutes today, and I will do my level best. I do think what I have to tell you is very important, and I would appreciate your patience with me.
If it's something specific for this loadout facility, I'd like, if you would like to hold it until after the presentation, and then we'll open it up for public comment.
Okay, let me ask you first, are you voting?
We're not voting on anything.
Okay, because I don't wanna open dialogue and have, you as a board make a decision on anything, not hearing my input. And honestly, I'm here today representing about 437 Winnemucca County area residents. And so I think what I have to say is very weighted and very valued, and a lot of people have asked me to speak because they can't be here. So I'd be happy to do it during any time today, during this meeting that you see fit, but it is about the transloading facility, and it's also about being a property owner near the airport. So if you want me to address, the property ownership near the airport first, and then we can get into the transloading stuff later, I'm happy to go that direction.
I would like you to do it at the end of the presentation from Lithium, Nevada, because it would probably be, they're gonna give us a view of the
They're-
whole site plan.
They're not gonna answer any of my questions, but I'm happy to do it then if that's what you prefer.
I would, if that's okay with you.
I'll be back.
Okay. Do we have any other public comments?
Christina Hanson, resident near the airport. There's been a lot of concern about many different things, including the voting that happened at the last meeting and some pretty complicated things have definitely come up. I've reached out and been in touch with, different government agencies, including, Alexis Hansen, Mark Amadei's office, numerous others, and there's a lot of concern, going around about the specifics and what is, the legal way that things are supposed to be done, and if it's being done properly or not. One of the things that has come up is that as the airport board, you are able to, and I think this is a great idea. You are able to request from the Nevada Attorney General's office, a legal opinion, on these matters, and, hopefully clarify some of the liability and the questions, and be able to protect the airport and yourselves, at the same time. And I think that would be doing due diligence and protection for everyone involved. And so I just wanted to bring that to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Do we have any other comments? If none, we will proceed. As staff, board members had a chance to review the minutes for correction or approval.
I would go ahead and make a motion to approve the June 12th minutes as presented.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll move on. Warrants for review or approval. Alicia, do we have any? Business signs for discussion. The first one on there, I won't read all of that, is the, agenda item number 1 is Armstrong Professional Service Agreement for Airport Signage Project. Discussion and possible action. Staff, please see the attached proposed scope of the work and calculation of the design package for the airport signage project. Design package will include, updates for the airfield signage, replacement and possible relocation of supplemental wind cones, replacement of the PAP-A and runway 14, runway 32, 20, and nav there, update. Total proposed design is $590,000 to be, funded by the bill funding. Staff recommends approval. The professional service agreement will be placed on the August 22, 2023 City Council agenda for final approval. You wanna talk to that, to us a little bit, Alicia? I know everybody's got a copy of that.
Yeah, so, the design only, this is actually with our bill funding, which was the infrastructure funding. And it is on our ASIP, and it is, originally it was budgeted $106,000, it came in at 89, whatever that number is, I pulled up a different document now.
99,590.
Alright, and, it does include all of those elements that are listed, the updated signage, the replace the supplemental wind cones and relocate them if needed, replace the PAPIs on the runways, and it will include the MAGBAR update. Armstrong might have additional information about the project, but those are the basic pieces of it.
Do you have any questions or discussion?
This came up, in the May meeting, I think, was it the May meeting? And at that time I mentioned that the $106,000 for design on a $240,000 project seemed a little steep, and I still think a $90,000 bill for the design on a $240,000 project is a bit steep. In addition, we've now thrown in the wind cones. The wind cones, or the wind softs, were just put in, they were designed in here not that long ago. And now we're redesigning it, and I see that they're moving them.
Well, it's possible to move them, but they're being rebuilt as we speak.
Temporarily, but they're talking about moving them in closer to the
No,
runways.
moving them farther away, not closer.
No, they can't move them closer, farther away than they are right now. They would be off the airport. They're out by the fence now.
They're not, that's the inner fence.
Whatever,
But
you
it's two
can't even
fences.
see them from the runway.
You'll still be able to see.
At any rate, we designed and built this once. Now we're designing the same thing again by the same group and paying for the same design again, 5 or 6 years later. And I question what's going on with the wind cone. The drawings that I saw in here definitely showed a proposed position closer to the runway than they are currently. know they're being just rebuilt right now, there's some new structural materials being put in, but with my understanding, that's kind of a temporary thing, and then this design is gonna be the permanent installation. We're not gonna modify the wind shocks now, put in new structure, and then pay to design that afterwards. That's even more absurd. So, I need some, again, $90,000 for a $240,000 project seems a bit steep.
I believe there was an updated estimate on the construction cost, and it's not included in this. Armstrong, I thought I saw an updated, just a rough construction cost that included the PAPIs, which was quite a bit higher than 240,000.
Looks like,
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna say, I can jump in, it looks like you're having some audio issues, so, Nadine, do you have that, or revised cost estimate in hand? I was gonna speak to the Magbar update a little bit and give everyone a little insight in what that entails, because that is quite involved.
I don't have the construction costs, off the top of my head or in front of me. But essentially the estimated cost that's shown on the exhibit is a combination of, what the total build funding available is, and our estimation at that time. And since then, the scope has changed slightly, because if you recall at the ASIP meeting, we did, talk about what the scope was, and it didn't include, I think it didn't include the, Magbar update in total at that time. And regarding the wind cones, as far as the design goes, I don't know currently what is exactly what's happening as far as redesigning them right now, but essentially the intent of the design for the wind cones on this scope of work is to provide a structure that will withstand whatever forces are bringing them down currently. And so that you won't have to redesign them or repair them as much in the future.
Yep, and so the fairly minimal design effort on the wind cones, really what we're after is getting those in a bid package. I was involved with that project when we replaced those a handful of years ago, and that was funded under an AIP project. We were, essentially we had to allow those wind cones that were used because they were on the approved equipment list. Knowing what we know now, we can basically put a few more requirements on there and get wind cones that are a little more robust, and maybe exclude some of the manufacturers that have some issues based on experience. But the real intent of that is to just basically get the wind cones in a bid package so that the city can go out and get those replaced. What I wanted to talk about specifically, I think the update signage and the wind cones and the PAPI replacements are all fairly straightforward. The Magbar update is a fairly complicated process. That was identified during NDOT's last inspection at the airport. Kurt noticed that the runway numbers, which represent compass directions, had varied, were quite a bit off from what the true compass headings were now. And so that sparked the entire conversation with the FAA regarding the Magbar update. The FAA has indicated that they would support a project to do that. There is a decent amount of coordination that has to happen ahead of time, because we have to basically republish all of the existing approaches to the airport, showing the new runway designations first, and then get caught up on the back end with the physical changes on the site, which is, the signage panels, runway markings, etc. Based on experience, that is a fairly strenuous process to get through all the various FAA lines of business. While the end result is fairly simple and inexpensive, i.e. we're changing paint markings on the runway and putting in new sign panels that reflect the new runway numbers, the amount of coordination with, we Armstrong end up being the coordinators, if you will, through about 3 or 4 different FAA lines of business to get, basically get everything timed such that there isn't a need for extended nodems or some, miscommunication on, FA pubs, et cetera, that show the wrong runway number. So that part specifically, that element 4, has a pretty significant effort that is above and beyond what would be typical of other design elements that are within that scope of work. And I would presume that 240 has been indicated up, that's the current, construction costs for all 4 elements.
Thanks, Chris. Is that,
Well, I
guess
I'm
that's
not
a-
sure, again, with, the design is the engineering design is $90,000. I'm not sure what the construction costs are, because I didn't hear the only thing I heard was that we got to know what the funding is available, and that's what we made the construction costs. We matched the construction costs to the available funding, which is that the way we wanna do things?
Good question.
Does it have to go out to bid?
It does have to go out to bid.
yeah,
On the ASIP lists the available funding because the ASIP is submitted to the FAA, how we're going to use the funding. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the project is going to cost, that's just what we're going to request from the FAA for the funding. So we could go out to bid and it could cost 500,000, we don't know. 240 is gonna come from bill funding from the FAA, and if we're going to move forward with the project, then the other 260,000 would have to be funded by the city and the county. You don't know, we would have to figure out the remainder of the funding at that time.
But
if
surely
were
we could get
moving forward.
within closer than 100% difference.
Yeah, just the project isn't listed that way on the ASIP because that's specifically showing what the FAA funding is gonna be. We don't necessarily submit, when it goes out to bid, every project cost is different. And that's, even when we did the general aviation apron hard stand, the bids came in super high and we eliminated a couple schedules and then did them at a different time, rather than trying to figure out how to fund them locally, the remainder of the project.
So the only hard number then is the 90,000 that's going to Armstrong for designing this.
Yes, that's the
We
hard
don't know how
number,
much it's gonna cost.
but we know we have 240 available from FAA funding.
And we know we have to get that engineering done in order to go out for a competitive bid.
Yes, the Armstrong will be preparing the bid package and the DVE program and everything else that goes along with that.
So how come does the engineering have to go out to bid?
So we went out to bid, we're on year 3 or 4 of a 5-year contract, so an RFQ was advertised and Armstrong submitted their qualifications and Armstrong was awarded the 5-year contract for engineering services. But each task order like this is also approved for each project. So Armstrong has the overall 5-year contract
and that,
for design
that
services.
contract's renewed every 5 years.
I think I agree with you, Brad, but I mean, if they engineered this thing 5 years ago and they're falling down, is there any warranty on their engineering or any?
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah,
it just seems like a lot of money for
And I don't see a breakdown in here either for,
$50,000.
do you guys have a breakdown on what the windsock engineering would be, or?
We did break that out separately. We have a pretty detailed fee breakout that follows the scope of work that shows the hours per task, but we don't break those tasks up amongst the 4 elements.
Wayne, do we have a letter from them on how to fix the windsocks?
Yeah, Chris sent me a letter on that, and that was for a temporary fix to make them higher, and the ones we have now will be, that they're okay to be fixed the way we are. They're a little bit stronger and a little bit higher, and they're within the limits, which are fine, and they're supplementary,
So-
windsocks.
So to back up, we're just gonna fix them for now until this project goes through, is that?
That is right, if
Are
we go
we-
through with it. We could the board could change their mind and say, well, we'll leave them as is, or not.
No, I don't think.
They've been blown down and breaking off at the base. So we're trying this quick fix because we've only got one windsock out there.
Are we still going to be able to use the solar that it's connected to and just replace the windsock, or is the whole thing going to be toast? For all of them?
That would be an option. That was bought as a package, so those solar powered wind cones were bought as one equipment item. And so that's, you know, we could look into that and just replace the windsock itself, because everything about it is just the same as if it were a hardwired wind cone. So yeah, that we can dig into that and find the most economical option. Like I said, a lot of the design effort is going towards the Magbar update and the other two items primarily. Our effort for the wind cones was really to get it into the same bid package as all the other electrical items associated with this project, so that we can go out to bid and replace it. The warranty on those items the work on that project was only warranted for 1 year by the contractor that installed it. The devices themselves, I think, had a 3-year warranty on them. At best, they may have only had a 1 year warranty as well. So we're beyond the warranty on the actual manufactured part. And like I led with, those were on the approved equipment list for the FAA, so we had to approve them because we're using AIP funding. The same thing would be true for this bid effort, but given our history there, I think we could get a little leeway with the FAA and do get a little more specific into what we're exactly looking for. And that would, to answer Natasha's question, we could just get replacement supplemental wind cones separately and not buy the whole power package, and then we're just buying the new bases and the new windsock assembly and not replacing the power source. That seems to be working.
So in your element number 2, you're referencing FAA AC 150 for the specification for the wind cone assemblies. Was that?
Yeah, there's a L107 is the specification within that AC that we lift. Beyond that AC, so there's a technical spec for the installation of wind cones that we will use and have to use because we are still using FAA funding, albeit the bipartisan infrastructure law funding. But
so they're not,
above and beyond that,
right now?
there is excuse me, what was that?
So they're not built according to those guidelines right now?
No, they are. So those guidelines, that's where I was heading towards. So that has the specification for the height and the frangible coupler and basically all the details associated with those wind cones are covered in that. The other thing that specification links to is the FAA approves or has a list of approved vendors for specific equipment items, and supplemental wind cones are one of the items on that list. And this particular manufacturer, and I haven't looked at it to see if they're still on the list, but this particular assembly was on that approved equipment list. And so we, essentially accepted it based on the fact the FAA had reviewed that equipment and deemed it appropriate. It seems like the frangible couplings for sure are suspect to be an issue, since that's what seemed to be the root cause of the windsock falling down. But beyond that, there may be some other issues that we can look towards other manufacturers and see if there's ones out there that will perform better than others in this scenario.
So is the height of the windsocks currently designed according to that AC?
Yeah, supplemental windsock is a specific height and a specific windsock length. So yeah, that height and the windsock itself length is all standard. And so there's 2 different sized wind cones. There's the primary that is within the segmented circle, and that is obviously taller, and then the sock itself is longer. And then there's supplemental wind cone specifications that have a standard height and a standard windsock length.
Okay.
Chris, did you say this was performed 8 years ago or 5? I'm sorry, you broke up right when
I'm working off of memory here, but I thought it was a 2014 project when this was done, but that's off of memory. I can follow up on that.
No, I was just curious what you said. And also, did you say that even this replacement wind cones may have the only warranted for 1 year from the manufacturer?
Yes, so the warranties on the equipment is a little different from depending on what it is. Some critical items, which this would not be one, have a longer warranty period on them, but this would be at a minimum covered by the contractor's 1 year warranty, but those are typically also covered by manufacturer warranty. So if anything happened within the first year, the contractor would be responsible for fixing it, and the manufacturer would likely provide a replacement part within that 1 year. There is some exceptions to that, but that's a given in most instances.
Okay, and that includes, did you say it's a joint or a couple, what's the,
It's a frangible coupling.
yeah, coupling, that's also included in that coupling?
Yeah, that's an issue that we have fought with the FAA since they changed the sighting criteria on supplemental wind cones. So they make us put it outside the object-free area, which is everyone's complaint because the object-free area here is 400 feet off the center line. But then they also, the other arm of the FAA says it shall also be frangible. And so that was part of the discussions over the past few weeks. It really shouldn't need to be frangible because they're required to put it outside the object-free area. However, to be on the approved equipment list for the FAA, it must have a frangible coupling on it. So it's kind of this, I don't know, there's some inconsistency with FAA guidance on this particular thing, and that was some of the comments when we were going back and forth with Wayne and Tom, I believe, on this as well, is, I think the airport would be fine basically undoing the frangibility of that because we know these all to be outside the object-free area, and other, anything else installed outside the object-free areas are typically not required to be frangible. And so that could fix the issue, basically just by making it non-frangible, but if we follow the guidance and we bid it out with FAA dollars and have to basically buy something off of an approved equipment list, that's gonna have a frangible coupling as part of the standard for it, can be fixed with.
I think the big problem that we had with these supplemental wind cones, in particular the one off 3-2, was the location. Because it's in a little valley, and so I'm thinking what happens is the wind kind of just gets stuck in there and whips it around, because that's the one that we have consistently had an issue keeping up.
What we've gone locally out to our Drake Electric, which is our contractor, he's in the process of fixing those, and they're gonna be extended up about 2 feet, a non-tangible coupling, and according to the letter from Armstrong, we're gonna get it fixed locally for the time being, so we got wind cones out there, and it falls within the guidance.
It just seems odd that a windsock is not designed to withstand wind.
Yeah.
I mean, they must have some different specifications on the frangibility.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like the idea of frangibility because I've seen how some of my students fly. But, like, maybe a little bit stiffer for where we're at.
I mean, the wind does blow in Winnemucca, and as it does elsewhere, I'm sure. They must have.
Maybe the ones they put in
There's-
Wyoming, we need to look at those.
Yeah, there's certainly a variety of ways that manufacturers meet the frangibility requirements, and some hold up better than others, so, that could be, part of the experiment too. There's a variety of frangible couplers out there that are the same size, so, I don't know off the top of my head which ones perform better than others in given circumstances, but this isn't, with supplemental wind cones, this is not unique to Winnemucca. Supplemental wind cones oftentimes are problematic because of the frangible bases on them, as opposed to the primary wind cone is not frangible, and we never have issues with those, but supplemental wind cones tend to cause issues at many airports, especially in high wind areas.
You said Cam is raising them 2 feet and doing what else?
They're gonna be a hard.
Okay,
Not frangible, yeah.
Yeah, he's gonna see if they get some solar going too.
Well, back to the whole project. I guess we won't have an estimated actual cost for this until this design is done, is that?
The engineer's estimate will be a piece of Armstrong's, design. And then, so that's still just an estimate until we go out to bid and we get bids, then we'll have a construction cost. And so at that time, we'll decide, are we gonna use bill funding, which might only be $240,000, or try to work it into the main ASIP where we request the full 93.75%.
Chris, this is Tom Haas. When you guys were here the other day looking at the windsocks, we talked about getting rid of the frangible, extending the pipe 2 feet. But you also mentioned that you needed to, if we were gonna move them, because one's down in a hole, you would have to get this okayed in order to move them to a different area. And are we gonna fix them? I mean, they've been down for how long? A long time. How long? Maybe year, 6 months?
I mean, pretty much the one on 3-2 has been down for over a year. It was fixed, but it was down within a week. So it has been down for almost.
So as far as I know, C.R. Drake has got the lids ordered and he's going to go ahead and fix them. Is that what you guys have heard or worked with?
That's what's happening.
Hmm?
That's right.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify that, is all. Thank you.
I think we need to move.
I was just gonna say, there was one question there I was gonna answer. So yes, if we move locations, we will submit a airspace review on that, even though it's technically, and this is another vicious loop within the FAA guidance, but it is a vertical structure on the airport. So we would, as part of our effort, put in an airspace case for that new location of a windsock and get approval for it, even though it is technically frangible.
And I just wanna add to that, the scope of work is for us to figure out if they need to be moved, where they need to be moved, and how, much taller they need to be. That's where the whole spectrum is. So we don't have any, I would say we don't have a whole lot of finite answers for you right now about what everything will look like exactly. That's gonna be, for us to figure out in the design process.
Did you guys catch any of that?
No. So do we wanna move forward with this? Board? On the design?
Well, we have to replace the signs and.
Yeah, we gotta,
The mech bars need to be, we need to move forward with that.
I would say so.
I'd go ahead and make a motion to accept the professional service agreement in the amount of oh my gosh, I lost it, $89,590, is that what it was?
Yes.
To Armstrong Consultants to be moved on to City Council.
We have a motion on the board. Any more discussion? We have a second on that? No second, and we'll let that one die out. Okay. Agenda item 2, the site plan review for proposed transloading development, discussion of possible action. The city council has approved the leasing of 177 acre space west of the airport to Lithium, Nevada for a proposed development of the off-rail to truck transloading facility. The property is zoned Airport Industrial District. Under the Airport Industrial District zoning code, it states that the site plan review will be done by the airport board during lease negotiations. The county code does not have any provisions regarding the plan review. So the attached checklist, which the board members have in their packet, was created based upon items required on a site plan for development within a city as a guide for review. Staff performed review on the site plan, and notes from the review are attached, as you can see. The notes include comments from County City Planning Staff, and Armstrong. So with that said, I would like Lithium to give us your presentation. So the airport board can review this site plan.
Thank you, and my name is Tom Karras with Lithium Americas Corporation. And I understand that you do each have a copy of the actual site plan, is that correct?
We do.
Okay. And my understanding again is that you're interested in having a description of what the site plan looks like, how the site plan is laid out, and then I'm here to answer any questions that you have in the site plan. So you tell me how you'd like to proceed. I can start right at the beginning, and I'd like to work basically east to west and just kind of give you an overview of the site. Would that work?
That would work for the board, I'm sure.
Okay.
Proceed.
And I do have two other Lithium Nevada reps here, Sheldon Hurst and Don Hendricks. And Don will be keeping any notes if you have any comments in particular that we need to be aware of or clarify in the future. So the codes over on the right-hand side are very important. The green is the railroad track running from east to west. You see the straight long line of the Union Pacific Railroad main line. And just to the west of Airport Road, you see the main turnout, which comes into the transload terminal. It's fairly close to Airport Road, and that's to have a long entry rail so that we never risk blocking Airport Road. So when a train comes in with the rail cars to be transloaded, the entire train with all the cars, the maximum number of cars that we intend to ever have in one switch, as we call it, will be able to clear Airport Road and clear that mainline switch. There's a complete loop that goes all the way around the transload terminal. This allows Union Pacific Railroad, when they drop off cars, to pick up the empty cars and continue around an entire loop and head right back out the way they came without having to change directions. The actual fence line, which is kind of in a purple color there, matches for the most part the site property line. The entire parcel up to the entrance road that you see there will be within the fence. Now the main entrance road coming off Airport Road is a straight east to west road, and you see it kind of dead ends there just outside of the terminal project, transload terminal project. That was left like that on purpose so that there's future potential development and access to any future development in the eastern parcel, as we call it. So we are planning on developing the western parcel, 177 acres, which is designated for non-aeronautical use. And the eastern parcel, which is designated for aeronautical use, will have an entrance road that can be used for future development. The numbers and the letters are also important to understand. So the numbers are the different types of transloading that will take place. And you can see there's 6 of them: the sulfur, the soda ash, the quicklime, the diesel, the caustic, and the hydrochloric acid, HCl. And then there's also 3 main buildings. There's the utility building and the control room building, and way off to the west end of the parcel is the truck shop. It's a maintenance shop for the trucks. By the number 1 on the drawing in the center there, you see sulfur, and also on the legend you'll see the maximum height, 40 feet. That's the height of the sulfur storage tanks, which are the 2 small circles just below the number 1. So what happens is the trains come in the 4 green tracks that are just to the left of that number 1, and they will empty their sulfur into those 2 sulfur tanks. And then the trucks come on the east side of those sulfur tanks, and the sulfur is loaded from the sulfur tanks into the trucks, and they make their round trip up to Thacker Pass and back. It's similar for 2 and 3. These are 2 solid products, the quicklime and the soda ash, and those have 2 silos. So when the trains come in, they will unload a rail car up into the silo, and then the trucks to be loaded will pull up next to the silo and will be loaded, top loaded from the silos. Now those are tall silos, 137 feet. Remaining 3, the 4, 5, and 6, the diesel, the caustic, and the HCl, all have their individual spaces for transloading directly from rail car to the truck. Another thing that's interesting to note is, if you look at the far right-hand side of the drawing, you see the power lines coming in. They come in right by that little electrical substation there, and you can see a white line which continues over to the west. And I'm sure that you're all aware that years ago, I don't know when it took place, but years ago it looks like those power lines were moved away from the end of that runway and then back in a straight shot across. What we would like to do, and it's indicated in this plot plan, this site plan, is because you can see the power lines go right over the top of the utility building, just south of the sulfur transloading, we would like to go ahead and reroute those power lines right around the 177 acre parcel to the south. That's really the quick overview, and I think it might be just appropriate if you have any questions or any areas that you want me to go more in depth into.
You moved the power line to the south, closer to the airport?
No, if you look, oh, did you say can you?
You said that you wanted to relocate the power lines to the south.
Yeah, so if you look at the, you see the white line that's just north of the letter A? The white line that's the continuation of the, that's where the power lines currently are. So where we show the power lines jogging down to the south and back up to the north, that's not where they are right now. This is the site plan that shows where we would relocate them to.
On the outside edge of the property line.
Right, they would be within the property line, but right on the outside edge, correct?
Above ground or below ground?
Above ground.
And that's how it is right now, correct?
Right now it jogs up north of the runway, comes back down and heads in a straight line all the way across the straw.
It's above ground.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yes. Yes, they are. And right now, those are a combination of transmission and distribution lines.
Will there be any visible smoke or moisture coming out of the transloading facility?
No, there will not. And in fact, we have, as part of our permit to the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, the application that we have to submit, which we have not done yet, we can't do until we have the lease finalized. They're very strict. I've been through permitting processes with NDEP several times, working with Cyanco over the 10 years I worked with them. And they're very picky on any kind of emissions, whether it be particulate matter, PM they call it, or other vapors.
So, follow up on that, what I've seen mentioned in here is the consumption of 12 acre feet of water per year.
Right.
That's 4 million gallons, or almost 5 million gallons. And it's being used, also it's mentioned being used to remelt the sulfur to get it out of the cars and to get it molten so it's mobile.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of right. The sulfur, I've worked with sulfur my entire career. My first job out of college was at a sulfuric acid plant in Florida, in fact. And sulfur, when it arrives from the supplier, is in insulated rail cars, and it depends on the season and how long it's been on the rail, how long it sits before you unload it. It typically stays in liquid form for a long time, many days, if not weeks. But it will slowly, like anything, start to solidify from the outside in. So if we get it quick enough, within just a few weeks from the supplier, we'll put a little steam on it just to heat the liquid back up to make sure it stays liquid. But there could be, especially in cold weather, some solid sulfur that has to be melted. But that's what the water is for, correct? It's to supply the boilers.
So, again, that follows up on Hal's question, is if you're consuming 4 or 5 million gallons a year, where's it going? If it's not going up in steam, where is it going?
Yeah, I would say that, it is going up in steam, but steam is not considered to be a visible, emission. I mean, if you see a big power plant, you'll see the steam coming up, but you'll see the particulate matter, which after the steam disappears, the particulate matter is there. So typically what happens is, the steam traps at the cars, the rail cars, the steam heats them up, and then the condensate comes out and goes into a deaerator to go back to the boiler, and there's a little stack in the top of that boiler, just a few feet high, and you'll see a little steam coming out of it. That is correct. So if you did mean steam, then I'm correct.
Yeah,
So,
visible moisture.
yes, that is visible.
I mean, that's what,
And how?
the concern is visibility.
Yeah. If you wanna have a good indication, the boiler that we'll be running here to produce the steam necessary to do these is a very small fraction. I think it's about maybe 20–25% less than a quarter the size of the one that we have at Cyanco right now. So if you drive down to the entrance gate of Cyanco and look right in the middle of their stacks right there, that's where their deaerator sits. I know because I installed it years ago. And you won't see it from the front gate, which is only a matter of 500 feet away.
Unless it's really cold.
So you're just gonna have little steam blooms from
It's really
12
cold
acre
outside,
feet.
it's gonna.
I mean, you're gonna consume 12 acre feet.
Well, I'll tell you what, that 12 acre feet is obviously in a design very conservative. I mean, I'm an engineer and I design things very conservatively. I would be surprised if we use that much, but that's what the design shows.
And to use, you're not gonna use municipal water, so you're gonna use groundwater. So that, before that groundwater can be used in your boiler, it's gonna have to be treated.
Right.
How are you gonna treat it?
It'll be treated with RO units.
So reverse osmosis, so what then do you do with the salty reject from the RO?
Yeah, it's a concentrate. It's called a concentrate. It
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily called a salty reject.
Okay,
But that will go up periodically in a truck to Thacker Pass, where it's used to the lithium carbonate processing plant, where it's used in part of the processing there, so we don't waste any of it.
okay, so there'll be no ponds
No,
on this site,
none.
no open water?
None.
And who oversees that? Still the NDEP?
Maybe get into an area that I'm not as familiar with, but that's the, it is permitted,
Okay,
but I don't think that's NDEP, but I'm not positive, I'll be frank with you.
okay, but it is a permit.
We have a list of, an extensive list of all the permits, from environmental permits to building permits, et cetera, that are required, and that is one of the permits.
Okay.
That's my question. I noticed on the information we have here on the reviews, everything that's in red has to be approved, you have to get the approval for. And when that's done, which is all, when that's done, that's when the negotiations are complete, that's when your lease will be approved.
We can't.
Now, my understanding is actually that, we cannot begin until we get the lease. See, if we tried to go to NDEP right now and say, we want to give you all this information, what our process looks like, and get a permit, they're gonna say, oh, have you got the property yet? We say no, and they say, well, we don't wanna talk with you yet.
You won't get the property until all these things are
But-
done in red.
But here's the thing,
Right.
like what you were just implying there, is once we get the lease, then we go for all the different permits, and
Right.
we cannot, depending on what permit it is, either start construction for some permits, or start operation, depending on what the permit is.
Until all these
those permits
requirements are met,
approved.
right, and that's what's in red here on your.
Correct.
Tom, what,
Yes.
how are you gonna get it out of the ground? Says you're gonna use groundwater, you're not using municipal water. You're gonna drill a well,
Yes.
okay? Got any ideas on how big that well will be?
No, I don't have an exact size for the well yet, but I know it's gonna be big
I
enough
would-
for the 12 acre
I would
feet.
ask you to come back here and give us some information.
Mhm.
That's what this is supposed to be all about.
Well,
Now, at the Boys and Girls Club, I questioned the 12 acre feet of water all along. And I got an apology at the Boys and Girls Club from one of your engineers. I don't know whether you were there at that meeting or not. And they said it would be at least 57 acre feet instead of 12. Which even makes it a whole lot different on what you guys are pulling on the ground, what you guys are making in steam. And it's not Florida. You know, when it's 10 degrees below zero out here, it's gonna make steam. As long as it's hotter than the outside here.
Make visible vapor.
So he has a valid point as to whether or not it's going to cause us problems with the airplanes.
Cause problem with what?
With the approach of 1-4 when airplanes are coming in, because that's our main runway.
How is that boiler fired?
I don't,
Natural gas.
So, does it show on the plan where the LNG storage tanks
Well, it's
are?
not LNG, it's gonna, right now, running down Airport Road is a main natural gas header.
Pipeline?
Correct.
And you need 12 acre feet, so how you get this, it's just gonna be part of this. You're gonna have to pull up at least 12 acre feet.
Right, as far as the sizing of the well is concerned, 12 acre feet.
Now, wait a minute,
1,440 gallons
wait a
per
minute,
minute.
so you're calling me a liar?
No, sir. But in what way?
Well, you're going back to 12 acre feet. I told you that they reiterated on that. And I believe that we have recordings and everything else that show that to 57. So now you're reiterating back and all we're gonna have to draw out of it is 12 acre feet. The thing is, Tom, is that that basin that it's in services that whole area, okay? And it's already down in Pershing County. They haven't got any water. And we're hoping it'll resupply somewhat from this last winter. But you turn a pump on over there and you're wanting to go 24/7, which means that pump will be on all the time. What's gonna happen to our water?
Well, my understanding, by the way, no, I'm not calling you what you said. I'm just saying that I know what the current design is. So I cannot answer for what happened several months ago or what might have been said several months ago. I don't know. But I know that the current design shows 12 acre feet. I also know from my time that I've lived here in Winnemucca that it is very carefully controlled how much water is withdrawn, and we have to be permitted to withdraw whatever we take out of the ground. And we will, of course, have the approval to take that much water out of the ground.
What if it's not there? See,
It
that's,
won't run.
since you were here, things have changed tremendously in Nevada as far as water is concerned. And we went through a drought, we lost a lot of water, we had a lot of trouble with the wells, we had to put wells down further and blah, blah, blah. Every one of our basins is over a lot. So are you buying water rights? And putting a new well down, or is it an existing well that you wanna use that's already been in place?
We are buying water rights,
So you will put a new well in?
yes.
It says on the checklist.
And that will be governed by the Nevada Division of Water Resources. We don't have any control over issuance or denial of water rights.
Right.
Do we know how deep that well will be? Or if we can find that out?
You probably don't remember.
At this time.
Has Lithium Nevada, before embarking on a project like this in a community, ever participated in a formal risk assessment for that project?
A formal risk assessment is a part of the project, that is correct. We've done internally many risk assessments, informal and formal. Legally, there is a formal risk assessment which we will conduct as part of the permitting process before we can either begin construction or begin operation.
Right, and what I'm suggesting is an independent, not an internal one, but an independent one that allows all of the stakeholders in the area to have a representative in that formal risk assessment process. It's actually facilitated by somebody that doesn't have an axe to grind, or doesn't have a dog in the fight. Is there any plans for that? I mean, that would go a long ways towards increasing your credibility with the public if you have systematically addressed the concerns, the legitimate concerns of the public and of the airport board. There's still concerns.
And it's
of
not
the
just in a
airport
formal
board.
method like that, but it's also informally, and I'm well aware, I think probably we all are well aware that there's been many questions that have been asked, and we've done our best at a number of meetings to answer them, including most recently by some of the good folks in this room here. We've are preparing and have just finished preparing some good answers, I believe, for them. But that's really not what I came prepared for here.
I understand, but I'm just suggesting that perhaps that's something that Lithium should consider is arranging such a process. It may take, maybe you have to spend $50,000 to do that.
You know, I think that, it's a little bit off topic, but I'll go there for just a moment, but I do think that, a risk assessment is something that should be done, as you say, by people who understand what is happening inside and outside of the organization. I think that's probably different from the public meetings because frankly, there's not as much understanding of the technical aspects of it by the general public.
No, I'm not suggesting that be the general public, but the general public have representatives that have some technical knowledge that can participate in such a risk assessment. That can carry their concerns forward in the formal risk assessment process, because it's better to do that up front than to do it after an accident occurs.
Okay. I do agree with you, Mr. Wigglesworth, and I know that, we're taking notes, and I'm sure that, we'll discuss that.
I mean, that would just lend some credibility and some ease the concerns of a lot of people.
In an interest to move this meeting along, we're kind of off topic here.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to look at the
No,
site plan.
I think this is very
Actually,
on
not off
topic.
topic.
I think part of the problem has been that
The
we're
agenda
limited
happens
on
to
what
be
we
to
can
review
say.
the site plan.
Yes,
Their
and
meeting, not yours.
That's what we're doing.
I wanna get to the site plan.
Wow.
Because the staff
Wow
looked
is
at
right.
all the site plan.
AG's
and
office.
I've gone through this thing, this is my opinion, I'll just express it. I checked off all the boxes and I noticed that all the bases are covered. And what the ball is in Lithium Nevada's court to get all this stuff done. All our job is move this thing forward. And if we have stuff to move forward, any comments to this site plan, it goes to the airport manager. She in turn takes it to the city council, and then it goes to the county commissioners. And that's when I go with negotiations to get the lease. That's all we're moving forward with at this
So
time.
on the site plan, then, there's additional concerns on the two tall silos.
That's been identified.
Yeah.
And that would be,
And
and
what is
they know what to do for that. As
what is
indicated.
it they're gonna do for this?
So
They'll go out for go ahead.
I can answer that, in that, one of the many different, permits and approvals we have to get, which is a true approval, is from the Humboldt County Commission, because the Airport Industrial District says that any building or structure greater than 35 feet or taller than 3 stories has to have a height variance. And there are others on the airport surrounding areas, that fall into that same category effectively, so we will have to go before the Humboldt County Commission with a formal application for a height variance for the quicklime and soda ash silos and for the sulfur tanks.
They would also have to do an FAA airspace,
Okay.
yeah, there will be an FAA airspace study as well for those buildings. I don't know if it'd be helpful or not, but I can run through the items, the extra approvals that will be required, or extra permits that we know of right now. There could be more later, but this is what we're aware of at this time. The access road at Airport Road is subject to NDOT requirements and approvals. The sulfur transload, the soda ash transload, and the quicklime transload buildings will require a variance for the airport industrial district. That's what, Tom just mentioned, as well as an FAA airspace study. The next red has to do with the FAA airspace study, and there's a certain CFR related to that. The parking spaces, there's a minimum number of parking spaces. It's 1 per 500 square feet of gross floor area, or 1 per employee, whichever is greater. So we'll have to figure out how many parking spaces are out there. For air quality, an NDP Bureau of Air Pollution Control air quality permit will be required. Provisions for emergency services. Lithium Nevada will have to obtain a state fire marshal hazmat permit as required. Also, the rural fire chief has requested a minimum fire flow of 500 gallons per minute. And not noted here, but maybe should have been, is that Lithium Nevada will have to coordinate with the emergency manager for any emergency response plans. The perimeter of the project shall be fenced with an opaque fence. That's part of the Airport Industrial District zoning code. Any construction on the adjacent parcel, the eastern parcel or parcel B2 on the airport layout plan, will require a release request from aeronautical use restrictions in accordance with FAA Order 5190, Chapter 22, which also may require the NEPA process. Zoning staff noted the variance for the taller structures, and Armstrong noted the requirement for the airspace studies. A couple that I just wrote down as we were talking, NV Energy review and approval will be required for movement of the power lines. I'm not sure if there is any FAA requirement for the steam study, so that's something to be explored. And then water rights will be controlled by the Division of Water Resources.
I have a quick question. What parcel is 13-0242-02?
13-02, that is,
This one?
Yep, that's
Okay.
that one, yeah.
And it's noted, this is all in here.
Yeah. On the site plan, your road, the straight road that extends from Airport Road out to the west, where it crosses that, you have all of that property?
No, if you look at the, I don't know what you call it, but it's kind of like a sawtooth area. Notice that that's the long line with 3 little lines, long line, 3 little, that's the actual property line. So the parcel that we're interested in here, what we're calling the western parcel, is where you see all the green railroad tracks, plus what is north of that little saw line. You see what I'm saying? So the road comes in across the eastern parcel, and you can see it cuts one corner of the western parcel, that first zigzag line.
Yep.
And then continues on the eastern parcel. Likewise, the rail, where it comes in, you can see it runs a little bit on the eastern parcel, a tiny bit right there.
So the, I'm questioning is the land between the intersection with Airport Road and where it cuts that first sawtooth. Is that?
That construction will not be approved until the FAA gives the approval to do so.
So is that airport property?
No, the property that's adjacent to Airport Road is not airport property.
So whose property is that, and do you have that tied up?
That is a private property owner.
So if you can't negotiate that, this road won't be there.
Correct.
That's correct.
So where will the road be if you can't negotiate a deal there?
That will have to be determined. That's a good question. We do have some alternate designs if that does not take place, where it will come in south and head up around that private property and then continue over like you see. So it'll come up kind of south of where you see the power lines coming in
This
from.
might help everyone a little bit, and just so you know, the same landowner that has the section that you need is the same one that you would need if you were to move it to the south.
Thank you.
So maybe just to clarify also, the city council has only approved lease of the 177 acre parcel.
That's all we're talking about.
Anything on the other parcel will not, it cannot happen unless it's approved by FAA. So if, Lithium Nevada goes through the process, gets the FAA approval for that access road, at that time it would be brought back to, the appropriate boards. I don't know if it would be airport board and city council, whoever that would be, for an easement, lease, whatever that is needed to finish that construction on that.
Some sort of right of way.
Yeah, right of way, whatever it is. But that has not been explored yet because FAA has not approved.
So all the board is concerned about is 177.
And the site plan is all just on the 177, none of the stuff to the south. I mean,
Well, it is to identify approvals that will, any extra approvals that will be required to complete this site plan, which includes the FAA approval for
Right.
that construction.
The connection to the road here, is this widening the road? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
A turn, acceleration, deceleration, like that.
So can I ask a question on that road? When they come in, they'll have to cross the railroad tracks, and if you're unloading or your train's too long, can your semis get in and through?
I think she's discussing where this access road crosses your own tracks. I guess what happens if there's a traffic jam between the train and your trucks.
Well, then we'll just defer to the traffic cops to clear up the traffic jam. I mean, that's an operational question, really.
So we'll need more law enforcement. Okay, duly noted.
We also access on fire through there too.
All gotta be permitted.
I'm curious, you mentioned earlier about how the train is not, there's not gonna block the crossing, airport road crossing, because it's, your siding is long enough to accept the train?
Correct.
I mean, trains are varying lengths, some of them are very long, and the entire train is gonna go?
Yes. Yeah, if you look at the scale of feet in the bottom, you can
Yeah, I
see what
see it.
1,000 feet is. You can
Yeah.
see from the turnout from the main line until the first switch at the transload terminal, which is the return of that teardrop.
Yeah.
It's, several thousand feet, somewhere like a half a mile long. We'll never receive trains longer, than that.
No, I know you won't, but the train that is pulling the cars that you want could be considerably longer.
No, because, believe me, we've been working for several years with Union Pacific Railroad on this. We've gone through extensive design, which they have been heavily involved in. They have to fully approve it. Their plan of operations that they have for this, because of the volume that we'll have coming in here, the trains will be specifically designed and put together and come in with just our cars on it.
I see, so there'll be more dedicated trains than
Correct. Totally
general
dedicated train.
freight
Yes, it won't just be a regular train that gotta cut out our cars and send the rest of them away. What they'll do is they'll drop off the fulls and then pick up the empties and then go right back out an hour later.
So these trains will be specifically rated or more toxic in length based on what we currently have coming in and out through town. These will be
Directly for
just chemical loaded rail cars in length, all of them.
miles long.
Tell me if you want me to discuss that or not. Okay.
We'll save those for public comment, I think.
Really?
Well, should we,
I think, is there any action?
I think we should.
You need to open up the public.
Yeah, hello.
We'll open it up to public comment now on
No,
this.
no, you're supposed to open it up. Aren't we supposed to be able to discuss it with you guys during this session?
Public comment, right?
No, public comment, you can't comment on it.
You can come on it, that's why I'm.
No,
opening
what we're
up.
saying is by public comment, so it's on the agenda. So by Robert's rule, we should be able to have open dialogue with you
And
so
that's
that we
as-
can
that
have
is time.
answer.
During the item on the
Mr.
agenda,
Mayor.
they ask for public comment, that's when you can come up and communicate and they can respond.
So we're
Okay.
still
They-
on
they-
the
they-
agenda size item, but not switching to just public comment.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
I just wanted to
Got it,
understand.
just clarifying.
Thank you.
Lithium has presented it
You don't.
right now.
So it's up to him if he answers any public questions.
I would like him to.
We would too.
Well, I'll tell you, I
Or,
would, be happy to address any questions related to the site plan, but really, I'm very, very hesitant to get into something which I know how this has been, because I've been in some previous city council meetings that can last for hours, quite
well,
literally,
the airport board
while we
has
discuss the
to,
politics of it.
I believe that's
I'll
purpose
do
of
it this
public
way.
input.
the airport board needs to make a decision on the site plan. And then, after that's done, I'll open it up
No,
to public
no,
comment.
sir, I asked you before that, I asked you when I was gonna make my comment before that, if you were gonna vote on that, that I had things that I wanted you to know as a board.
We're not voting on it.
That's what you just said.
Accepting it.
So just clarify for me what you're gonna do so I understand, is all I'm asking.
I'm
Because
just
I-
going to open it up for public comment for everybody,
Okay,
after the board decides on the site plan.
no,
So there's going to be a
No.
vote on the site plan?
No.
I think if there's any public comment on the site plan, it
We
should
need
be
to-
heard in case we need to.
Address
like,
something.
I see what
Address
you're
it,
saying.
yes,
Okay.
public comments on the
You're an
site plan.
Correction.
we should
This is
hear.
what open meeting law means.
Before we
Open meeting law.
forward the site plan for comments, if we want to put notes on this, to forward it,
So not voting, you mean, that's just for you guys, okay, that clarified,
yeah.
not voting, okay. But yeah, we would like to have a voice in
Go
this
ahead.
as it's very public matter. Did you wanna go, Jamie?
well, I don't, you want
I'm,
to go?
I'm fine with that, but like I said, I would like to answer any questions that you or the public has on the site plan. I would like to, as a Lithium Nevada representative,
Prepare in
wait
advance.
until the appropriate forum to discuss things that are not related to the site plan.
Okay.
The site plan, which is on the 177 acres.
So they're critiquing what
He
you
wants
ask them.
information for, not rambling on about other things.
Other
I don't think I ramble, sir.
No, I think
know
we
some
bring very
relevant
relevant information.
They only want you to talk about the site plan, period. He does not wanna answer any other questions about anything else. It's just about their little site plan, period. That's all they want you to talk about.
Fair enough.
Yeah, they wanna definitely limit what we talk about.
Yeah,
You go.
and then you can go on public
So-
comment and finish your.
So the silos, there won't be anything coming out of the top of those, you're just storage?
Their
Oh, there
storage,
will
what
be.
happens is the rail cars will unload into the silos and then out of the bottom of the silos into the trucks, and there is a dust collector at the top, typical bag house as they call them, air pulse bag house.
You
So
said-
we'll have to
you
vent
said
to
you think it's
atmosphere.
about the visible moisture that you'll see is about 25% of what's currently coming out of Cyanco, you think?
Okay, keep in mind that is based on what I know of having worked for Cyanco for 10 years, knowing the size of their deaerator versus the size of ours, that's my best guess right now. I certainly don't wanna commit to that, I was just trying to give you a feel. So if you can look at Cyanco and see coming out of their deaerator, which is down low and in between the stacks, it's a short stack, so there's usually hardly anything coming out that's visible. If you can see anything coming out of there, or if you can't see anything coming out of there, you won't see anything coming out of this deaerator right here, unless you might be right next to it.
I've worked with boilers and everything else for 25 years. And with the steam traps and everything else, you're gonna have steam.
Yes, you
And the
will.
colder it is outside,
The
the
more.
more you're gonna be able to have see the steam. And the whole thing is, with your site plan, is for the airplanes coming in, when you have a whole bunch of steam coming off, it's gonna be tough to be able to see.
Well, I don't, for where it's at, I don't see, it's not on the final approach path to 1-4. To me, it looks like it would be on a downwind leg for landing 3-2, which you're gonna be 800 to 1,000 feet if you're following the rules. You're not gonna be down low, I don't think my concern was the steam affecting visual approach path into 1-4, and I don't see that.
Well, I can also say, I can respect your having worked with steam. I've done that my whole career too, as a chemical engineer, installed many steam systems, boiler systems, et cetera. And we just have a difference of opinion on how much steam perhaps. I mean, the whole idea of the steam coming out of a deaerator, which is typically a 1-inch diameter pipe, by the way, for a deaerator this size, causing enough steam that could cause a problem even 100 feet away, would just blow my mind.
How fast does the steam dissipate in various temperatures for the aircraft coming in and out? I mean, are there studies that are available for that to ensure, because I happen to be in, should we not make it, holy smokes plan for the aircraft if there is a plume of steam, I'm in the crash path, so I'd like to know what that, how fast is that steam gonna dissipate on a wide variety of temperatures, making sure that there isn't anything in the Winnemucca wind that's gonna travel and be an issue. And the vent to atmosphere on some of your tanks and the storage, they'll have to vent because they're going to create their own gas, the H2S, toxic gas. And so that's also a concern for myself in the wind, which is part of your plan here. What do we do with that?
No, there will not be any gases coming out of any of the tanks. They go through what's called a scrubber system.
Are you using emulsive, or what kind of scrubber are you using?
Say that again?
What kind of scrubber system?
It's a sodium hydroxide, a caustic scrubber system.
Okay.
And what percentage of it escapes? Is it a 75% scrubber? Is it a 50%, or is it 100%?
Nothing's 100%.
Correct.
Agree.
So
and what you're interested in, rather than the amount of, or the efficiency of it, is what gets through it, because you're right, there's
Correct.
always something getting through it.
Correct.
And that's where dispersion modeling comes in. If you look at the fence line on here, we have done preliminary dispersion, and for the NDEP permit, there will be further formal dispersion modeling done, which says you pick worst case conditions and see where the wind is blowing to the closest fence line. What is the possible worst case gas concentrations you can have of hydrogen sulfide, for example. And it is designed so that there's no detectable odor anywhere from the fence line on out in worst case conditions.
So what is the LEL on it?
Pardon me?
You said you were talking about the gas concentrations. What are the concentrations, not just smell? What are the concentrations of that gas?
Sulfur.
The question is.
Well, there's a percentage you were talking about, not just the smell, which is an obvious issue, but the gas concentrations to that fence. What are the percentages of the gas concentrations to that area?
Yeah, very, very low. Many orders of magnitude less than the LEL, which is the lower explosive limit.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. You've worked for Cyanco before and done many similar projects to this, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you believe this would fall under light industrial or heavy industrial?
Heavy.
It's not for me to determine. I really don't know.
So who should be the one determining that? Do you know?
No, you tell me.
Does anybody on the board know who decides if this is light or heavy industrial? I mean, the site plan goes over zoning. I've repeatedly said this is not zoned for this. The fact that now there's more and more variances coming up and we're looking at 137 feet, I mean, this is serious concern.
I have a
It's
question.
nothing affecting airport operations.
Yes.
According to you.
It's higher than the allowable.
Yeah.
No, it isn't.
No, this is the airport industrial
compliance?
district. You're not supposed to have anything over 35 feet,
I
period.
can't even have a windmill on my property over 30 feet.
I'm just wondering at what point are these corporations, they seem to be held to a different standard than the residents who live here. And where are we going to actually be heard in our concerns? Because I have here, actually, I think as the airport board, you should really hear this. Because I've been doing research into a lot of previous meetings where the airport board has been in, where they actually talked about a lot when they created the zoning for all of this. And talks about, this is from October 16, 2002. Steve West and Bill Deese, the fact that a site plan review would be completed by the airport board as a part of the property lease agreement. Richard added, everything will be negotiated by the airport board. There will not be property lines and footprints of the buildings available for review. It will be covered during negotiations. He added, the spirit is to help move the process along and to prevent planning from slowing down development and growth at the airport.
He noted planning will be no more of a hurdle than the airport board itself. The negotiations will be handled by them. If that was true, then there wouldn't be all these variances needed. And I believe that as the airport board, you really should be looking at some of the things that have been said in the past by them.
We have that, I hear, black and white, I hear what you're saying, I understand
I'm
that.
actually
I know
quoting from meeting minutes.
I know that, I got the ordinance and the references.
No, I'm
That's
not
fine.
quoting from the ordinance, I'm quoting from the actual minutes.
So what?
Where he
That's
feels
fine,
there
I
is a
understand.
responsibility to the other small communities to maintain their lifestyles and not allow loopholes that will allow someone to come in and develop without guidelines.
We
This
have
was
the
talked
guidelines.
about by the airport
I know
board, the
that.
planning commission, and everybody in 2002.
Okay,
I'm sorry, were you here then?
Were you here?
Well, I've been doing the research and
I
I've
don't
looked it all
care.
up.
I know,
Are you
I
going
know
to
you don't
dismiss me
care.
when
No,
I've
no.
done the research and you have not?
We're not dismissing you for nothing.
So I think-
You're giving me
Really?
public comment.
Because
That's
you're
fine.
stopping me from reading to you what was discussed at previous
That's fine,
meetings.
you read it, I appreciate
I'm
it.
sorry, I wasn't finished. You kept interrupting, actually.
Wow, you
Well,
guys.
how long do you wanna drag this out?
Well, I'm sorry, this is where I live, this is my life, my
I'm not
family's
trying-
life, this is very important. Are you saying it's not as important and you don't want to give more than 3 minutes for what is something that will
It's,
affect me and my family on a permanent basis?
we're going over a site plan.
This is,
Yes,
this is
and we have been
But
coming
this-
forward and talking about
I
all this.
understand that, and
Well,
we're
if
gonna have
you
to go
really wanna
forward
show
through
that
the-
you care, then maybe the board should get together and request from the Attorney General's office and actually get some legal representation, legal
We've got legal
counsel.
representation.
I'm sorry, where are they?
We've got legal
Where's your legal
representation from the
representation?
airport manager and
The
the
ones
city
that
attorney.
already went and gave away airport land illegally.
That's your opinion, I respect.
Oh, I have the proof. You guys just keep digging yourself in the hole, it's gonna help me out.
Fine.
Maybe we
So,
could- maybe we
okay.
could-
Could you just-
Wait, now, sir, I've got one more question that's related to the site plan that is area lighting in over this facility? What kind of plans are there for area lighting? Because the area lighting can have a considerable effect on nighttime operations at the airport.
The design is not fully complete, but is fully understood the importance of having minimal lighting for any nighttime operations just in the areas where the transloading will be taking place. There'll be downward, shining lights, nothing that shines outward or upward.
Cause it can be very distracting, I mean, yeah, for sure.
So in your plans and as part of this site plan, have you seen my list of questions for community involvement?
Yes, very good questions. I did see those, Jamie.
So have you addressed any of those that would affect your site plan here and helping us as residents know what direction you're planning going? Like I was talking about particulate matter and air concentrations with all of the exhaust from the vehicles in and out. That will be a factor and that will affect our air quality here. And so that's something that as part of your site plan, you're talking about parking and the allowance of vehicles. Is that something that you're looking into prior to this lease agreement? I don't think that without adequate research and adequate information, including the risk assessment by a unbiased party, I guess is how I should say that. I don't think a fair agreement can be entered into without that information.
All I can say is that there are certain, as has already been mentioned, permits and approvals, a multitude of them that are required before we either begin construction or before we begin operation. And we will obviously take each one of those and make sure they're approved before we begin the operations.
Well, as a resident that has to live there while you do this 24/7 operation, I'm asking our airport board and I'm asking you at Lithium to do some of this additional research before you get into your lease agreement.
And we did see those questions, and I thank you for those, and you'll be seeing, I'm sure, or hearing about
I haven't
replies
seen or
to
heard
those.
anything yet.
Right, but you will.
After you sign the lease agreement, is that when you plan on answering the questions? Is that the timeline that you're looking at?
Well, I really can't answer that. I mean, again, I didn't come prepared to discuss, timing of lease agreements or each one of the questions which you had. I think there were 15 questions. What I really came prepared to do here was to review the site plan.
Well, I think that what I've asked you and what I submitted to you and to Alicia and to the board were all very much part of your site plan and how it's going to affect, like the safety route. I mean, as you're developing all of these things, all of those concerns are equally weighted as part of your plan. How to, the sensors, how things will be taken care of. You can't really draft one without the other. And so that was why I'm asking you, you know, the order of things. And I understand, you know, time is a factor, being able to come prepared. But as part of your site plan, if you've looked at my list, you can see that those things are relevant and should already be part of this.
I'll just say that I don't consider them to be part of the actual site plan that we are reviewing them today, that we're reviewing today.
So safety is not first.
Safety is first. They're not part of the site plan, your questions that you asked.
Okay.
Different meeting.
That is correct.
Yep.
So I've
Understood.
included 3 additional approvals that have come up. Access to and from the UP main line will obviously require approval by UP. Any FAA lighting requirements will be required to be met, and all trucks coming in and out of the facility shall meet current FHWA and DOT standards for emissions. They would govern the emissions of the trucks.
You know, the lighting is really, it's actually kind of critical, because right now, the lights, just the outdoor lights that are hanging on the carry-on trailer building at night are very bright and are very distracting. And I mean, there was no consideration whatsoever for that, but they are very annoying if you are approaching the airport at night. And so it doesn't seem like it seems like kind of an afterthought, but that's what we want to keep it from becoming.
I'll say this almost hesitantly, but as a private pilot myself who hasn't flown in a number of years, though, I'm well aware of what you're talking about.
Alicia, can you go over the third thing again? What is it, the
All
emissions?
All trucks, so the semi-trucks, they're all governed by FHWA and DOT standards.
Okay.
So their emissions, they'll have to go through the annual inspections and everything per those standards.
And also your emergency manager, you had mentioned earlier, adding the emergency managers onto that.
For the emergency services, yes.
Yeah. And then the energy and water resources, but we can just.
We get that added to the site plan review checklist as it's forwarded up.
We can, and all of these additional approvals that will be required can be memorialized in a formal letter to Lithium Nevada, so they have a list also. And this doesn't have to be the end of the list. If something comes up later, it'll be added on to there.
Okay, I was gonna ask you about that.
Tom, a couple things. Hydrogen sulfide is gonna be in every one of those cars you bring in with sulfur. It'll be sitting out there in the open. How do they vent?
They vent to the caustic scrubber.
No, they're not hooked to a caustic scrubber. They're sitting there, they're hot. They just came here.
On the train.
You're not unloading them. They're sitting out there in our atmosphere.
And they don't vent.
Yes, they do.
Sorry, I don't agree with that.
Well, it's the only way you can get them down here without them bowling up.
No, what happens is from the moment that the manufacturer, the supplier, when they heat it up and put the sulfur into the rail cars, as I said earlier, from that moment on, over days and even several weeks, they begin cooling off and the pressure actually decreases inside the rail cars.
But that's when the hydrogen sulfide forms.
The
See,
hydrogen
our
sulfide is
scientists were good enough, but they removed the sulfur from the gas in the oil. They were good enough that they captured that gas. And as you heat it up and it cools, that gas is gonna escape from that sulfur. It's gonna be in that car. We asked Crowley about it. He says, well, it'll just vent. Okay, now you tell me it can't vent. But I know it can, I've done the research on it. Say, okay, so let's hook one of those up to get the sulfur out of it and put it in the truck. How are you going to capture that gas?
It actually goes from the rail car to the storage tank, and then from the storage tank into the truck. And I will maintain, and then we can discuss it more later, that the cars, when they're on the rail line, when they come into the transload terminal, when they sit waiting for transloading, they do not vent. When we unload them into the sulfur tanks, once we begin that unloading process, they are vented to the caustic scrubber, as are the tanks continuously.
Yes.
The sulfur also that we will be purchasing is what's called degassed sulfur, which most sulfur is from most suppliers nowadays, which means it's already been through a process which removes as much of the hydrogen sulfide gas from the liquid sulfur as possible before it's even loaded onto the rail cars. But you are correct, there is still some present, which is why we're in the scrubber.
Well, the scrubber you showed us, Lithium did in Nevada, is only 75% efficient. Our scrubbers on our electric plant up there in Bellamy is in the mid-90s. Why can't you do that? You know, it's this, the hydrogen sulfide is the worst thing that you're going to expect us to let you keep there. It's a very deadly gas. You and I get close to it, we're both dead. Am I correct?
Hydrogen sulfide is a very dangerous gas, yes.
And it comes out of those, it goes to the ground and stays on the ground.
Yep.
It isn't like what we have out there at Sanko, where if we have a spill out there, all of their stuff is gonna go up in the atmosphere. They told us that we'd never have a fire outside that, you know, or any problems outside their fence. So, because of that, but you're not in the same boat with the sulfur. And, you know, it's just too close to town. I mean, we don't want to take, we're not saying you can't have it, saying it's too close to town, I don't wanna endanger them.
Well, I hear your comment. It's not really a question, it's a comment, and all I can do is say I respectfully disagree. I have worked with this my entire career, hydrogen sulfide gas. In fact, it was the major product that we used to make sodium hydrosulfide and barium sulfide, etc., barium carbonate, Chemical Products Corporation, where I spent 15 years. We treat it with great respect. We're well aware, like many chemicals, of the dangers, and what we have coming in the sulfur is, compared to what I worked with at Chemical Products Corporation, extremely, probably 4 to 5 orders of magnitude less in concentration. And we have a scrubber that will remove. It's such that you won't even be able to smell it at the fence line. And by the way, you smell hydrogen sulfide gas in the parts per billion range. And you won't be able to smell it.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I didn't catch.
You won't be able to smell it.
You won't be able to smell it.
Correct.
Is that good or bad? That's bad. Yeah. Cause you can be in it.
I know you have the heights, what are the volumes for the sulfur storage and the soda ash silos and stuff?
Do you remember the volumes for the 2 sulfur tanks? Is it 5,000 metric tons each?
It's 5,000 metric tons of storage.
Each.
I'm not sure what that.
And I'm not sure about the 2 silos, but we can get that, you know, that.
So how much chemical are you planning on storing at the airport through all your phases? Are you still doing a phase 1 and a phase 2, and the volumes of chemicals for each phase are you planning on storing at the airport at any given time?
So if you look at the site plan, the 2 circles that show the 2 sulfur tanks, the first one to the north closer to 1 is phase 1, and phase 2 is the second one. So we show them both here to show you the fully developed transload.
And how many boilers will be running?
So phase 1 is,
pardon?
phase 1's gonna be 2 operating boilers. We'll have 1 as a standby, but only 2 will be needed at any one time. And then for phase 2, 2 additional boilers are added for a total of 5 that'll operate 3 at a time.
And what's more important than the number of boilers is the total steam output of the boilers. I mean, if you need this much steam, if you get it from one big boiler, which is always dangerous because if the boiler goes down, you don't have any steam. So therefore you tend to put in multiple smaller boilers for redundancy.
Hey, Chris, kind of a dumb question. Are all the roads on this site all paved?
Don, do you remember what the latest is there?
I don't, we talked about the road around the perimeter of the rail, which I believe is just gonna be kind of like, almost like an ATV trail. But I can't say for certain the roads internal to the loop and at the access point.
That is a very good question. I should know the answer to that, but I don't, so we will get that for you.
Chris, I got a question on the height for those, FAA requirements. They're far enough off from the, airport runway. They would still have to go into FAA for, I think the max height is 150 feet, right? These would only be 137, but they still go in for a variance, a request.
Correct. Yeah, given the proximity to the airport, Nadine put the information we had into the nose criteria tool earlier this week or last week, and it indicated that a full airspace case would be required. So even though it is under the 150-foot threshold, it's close enough to the airport that the FAA would still require reviewing the airspace.
Which would permit it one way or another, yeah, or.
Correct, yeah, the output of that would be a letter from the FAA either saying it's not a hazard to air traffic, or it is, or it may be, but can be mitigated, so. And there's a variety of surfaces they'll look at for that, some of those of which we don't have visibility on, so I wouldn't offer up whether or not there's gonna be an issue because of some of the turf surfaces associated with the instrument approach procedures are quite complicated, and we don't have that information in our hands. So that's why we would recommend that an airspace case be filed as soon as those coordinates and heights and overall dimensions are known with fairly good certainty, and then that gets submitted and you get an opinion from the FAA.
Okay.
Can you answer my question about the chemicals now?
No.
Okay, what was the question again?
How much chemical will you be storing at the airport at any given time?
It depends on which one you're talking about. Sulfur could be up to 10,000 metric tons in two 5,000 metric ton tanks. And the rail cars that would have it, but that's not considered storage.
So, okay, so how much molten sulfur does each rail car have, and then what are the provisions or spaces provided in your loop for molten sulfur as it comes in? I know you're planning on so many a day, but at some point during some of the meetings you've talked about having a week's supply worth available and being stored at the airport. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, and I'll be straightforward with you now. I did not even bring any of that information. We presented it before, and we can present it again at another public meeting. But as far as the operations, how many rail cars come in per day on average? How many will be stored on site at any one time or kept on site waiting to be unloaded? I just don't have them, and
it would change on the time of the year, depending on how long it takes to heat it up, and. Cause if we're in the middle of winter, the train cars are likely to be there longer than they would in the summer.
yeah, but that shouldn't change the number of them. The number of them has to do with how much we use at the Thacker Pass chemical plant, and that's constant throughout the year.
So, but the bulk of your backup storage and chemical will be stored at the airport while you wait to need it at Thacker Pass, is that right?
They want to back up in case there's an issue with any trains coming, right?
No, that is not correct.
Talked about?
Okay, well,
The whole idea is to have minimal storage here in the transload terminal and take it up to Thacker Pass, and that's where we have the
bulk of the storage.
Correct.
So do you have provisions in your site plan that talk about the amount of chemical storage on site at the airport in your site plan?
No,
No,
because it's
that is
only
not
a
part of
site
the
plan.
site plan.
It's only a site plan, it has nothing to do with that. I just had one quick question.
Is
You
this
know-
relevant to the site plan?
Kinda.
Okay.
Well, it's kinda, it's just one question I have
Okay.
about the sulfur connections. You're gonna offload this from the trains to this tank, right?
Correct.
And is this gonna be manually a connection, or do you have an automatic connection? Because my thought is, human error. If you're connecting these two pipes to this container, that was one of the things I wanted to know. How are you gonna connect from the train to that 500 metric ton unit without anything escaping if you've got people doing it? or is it automatic? I mean, how do you?
It is done by people, human hands are involved. And again, this has to do with, I'll be blunt, this has to do with an understanding of what is involved. And I would love to be able to provide more education. Maybe there's a forum to do that. Like I said, sulfur is the #1 commodity chemical in the entire world.
I missed that word.
And sulfur
Yes.
is the #1 commodity chemical in the world. Sulfur and sulfuric acid.
But you're planning
around
on-
the world in
planning on
6
moving it in
continents.
larger
There's this
volumes.
process that we're talking about here, and then the manufacture of sulfuric acid taking place. It's been done for generations. This is nothing new. And I find it difficult to address something that, to me, for the 40 years almost of my career that I've been doing, to someone who is, I understand, concerned and scared and thinking if humans are doing it, it's dangerous and it's gonna be a disaster. No, we take safety extremely seriously. We know exactly what we're doing and how to do it.
I have a question.
And other than that, it becomes an opinion.
Have you ever had this going in an inner approach zone in an airport before?
I don't think that's in the inner approved zone.
I worked for a company called Occidental Chemical Company in Lake City, Florida. The transload terminal there is about the same distance from the Lake City airport as this transload terminal is to this airport. So you can Google Earth that and see where it is. It's due north of the airport.
No, could you repeat that?
Please.
It's near the Lake City airport.
Where at?
In
Lake City, Florida.
So, I mean, we can go round and round about this.
That's why I'm gonna ask some
No,
more
we're just trying
questions
to
on the
understand your site
specific.
plan. We're working on it.
Are there any more
It's
questions
been
on the
really
site
hard to
plan
get anything.
specific?
Well, when it talks about the site plan, here from these meetings, when they talked about how they wanted to do it, and did you guys understand what I said earlier? It was hard because Mr. Smith was talking over me quite a bit. Did you guys catch all that?
At the airport, I mean, what I heard was that the airport board was.
This was
looking-
the planning. They had the airport board and yes, and then they also, Richard. What's this? What Ray responded about the sphere of influence, because what is built now will influence decisions for what is built at a later date as far as expansion or problems that will come up. He feels a site plan is an important tool for all boards to use to set standards for things to be done consistently. He feels there is a responsibility to the other small communities to maintain their lifestyles and not allow loopholes that will allow someone to come in and develop without guidelines. And I just noticed going through this, there seemed to be concerns about the residents that live around the airport. And this map that I gave all of you, you can see where the zoning is. And it's pretty much all zoned for residential around here. There's actually homes, there's one home, I believe, less than 900 feet from this property where they're looking at putting this. And this is where we have our families and, we support the airport. But there's also been things that have gone wrong in the past. For instance, my house is not supposed to be there. According to all of this stuff done, there's no residential is supposed to be in the inner approach zone. And that's where my house is. We were told later on that it was not enforceable. And so I'm just wondering who's responsible for allowing people to build homes somewhere where it's not safe. And then to add on to that, they're looking at putting all of this stuff in here. And I think the airport board needs to look at their responsibilities and what's expected to happen with this coming here and being next to homes and next to the airport, and that the risks are gonna be higher because there are homes where there shouldn't be homes. And that's something to consider, that things fell between the cracks already, and are we just gonna keep allowing more and more to go on that's going to put more and more at risk? And at what point is city and county going to be liable for the mistakes that have been made?
I do have another quick question. If the FAA review comes back and we no longer can have a instrument procedure for 1-4, I mean, what happens then?
That
We
would-
just don't have it, or?
No,
Cause like for 220, it got canceled because those trees on the east side that they want chopped down, but the homeowners won't, so
So-
you can circle.
So Lithium Nevada's development will have to conform to FAA's requirement, so no approach is going to be removed. If we came back with that determination, Lithium Nevada would have to revise their design to
Okay, so
conform
then
with the
you would
FAA
take, okay,
requirement.
and that's what I didn't know, that's why I wanted to clarify and see, okay, so that would be regarding to some of those probably.
So on your site plan, you're moving the power lines, is that closer to the runway?
Further away.
Further away.
Excuse me, in this day and age, why wouldn't those power lines be fiber optics buried underground instead of?
Fiber optic is for light, and this carries electricity, so they're the ones that are overhead. Both transmission lines, which is and distribution lines, which are 2 different voltages, but they're
So
typically
those lines
overhead.
can't be buried, you're saying?
They prefer them to be where they could see them and work on them. That's why typically even out of power plants, you see them going overhead instead of underground.
Are there any more comments in regards to our site plan review checklist? If not,
I'd go ahead and make a motion that we've acknowledged receipt of the site plan from Lithium Mine. We've acknowledged some different approvals that they need, requirements, ones that are noted in red on our agenda, along with the additional ones, whether it's NV Energy, the Water Rights, Water Resource Commission, FAA lighting, DOT standards on the trucks. Anything else that we've acknowledged today will be included within that site plan to be directed by staff to write it, to send it to Lithium. And at any time we can add as we deem fit.
anybody have any discussion on that or comments?
So what is the effect of this action?
Moving it to the airport manager.
To write the letter.
Write the letter, and then move it to city council, and then move it to the county commissioners.
The only thing going to county commission is the variance on the height.
Right, with,
For the
based
three
upon that.
structures that are above 35 feet, that'll go to
Right.
planning commission and then county commissioners.
So we're requesting that the city manager communicate get some answers on some of these questions.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Formal
Yes, we are
not approving
directing,
anything,
we don't actually approve it, we're just directing her, city manager to write
forward our
this.
questions or the questions in.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have a motion on the board, do we have any more discussion? So the board's saying you don't wanna move it forward? Or you don't?
So you need a second?
No.
Move forward, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Just the ayes have it. We'll move forward with it.
Chair, I'd like to go back, I know it's been a long night, but I'd like to go back to the professional service agreement. And I do think that is it called, Brad, what are you renaming the, what?
Mag bars.
If we need that, we definitely need that design work done. And if there's a way for us to maybe redo the scope of work to just include that mag bar at this time and not if it's something that we don't wanna work on the windsock, we want to work that on the engineering, but at least we can move on with,
What about the PAP
yeah, everything
Happy
but
Look,
that.
I don't understand what the big deal is here. The airport board didn't wanna act on that, clearly.
The city
What's
council's
to stop
still
the
gonna
city
act.
council from overriding the airport board?
Yeah,
They
city
haven't done it in the
council's
past.
gonna act, it's
They're
going to
gonna
be
act
on
on
the
it.
city council
Okay.
agenda next
Okay,
week.
I was just, alright, very good, thank you.
All right, where am I going here? Any other agendas? Moving on. We'll go on to staff board, member reports. Project updates. The snow removal equipment, delivery of the truck is gonna be soon, right, Mike? Before the first
as
snow
of
flies.
3 o'clock today, I was told that radio is in Reno at the shop and they are scheduling the truck for installation this week. Whether it actually is complete this week, I don't know. It shouldn't be too challenging. The truck chassis was built with the idea of a radio being installed, but we are closer than we were a week ago. So, things are moving in a positive manner.
What shop is that at, Mike?
It is at, I think it's called High Sierra Radio, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
They do, I know, I appreciate the levity, Mr. Owens, but, the radio shop itself, when I worked at the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority, they are pretty much the go-to radio for the city of Reno, shop for the city of Reno and lots as far as emergency vehicles and radio installations and light bars and all that kind of stuff. So
Awesome, thank you.
they're, yeah, it's not a guy in his garage.
Good to hear, thank you.
The GA apron hard stand. QD, tell us anything about that?
No, so they did come and collect samples, they sent them off to a lab where they're undergoing petrographic testing, and we don't have results on those
How
tests yet.
long does that normally take?
They said 6 weeks, well, at first they said 3 to 6 weeks, but then they said 6 weeks, and we're kind of right at 6 weeks, so we expect to get them this week would be great.
What do you think they hope to get from the petrographic testing?
It's supposed to, I don't know much about it, but it's supposed to give information about the quality of the concrete.
And the quality, well, I mean, it passed all of the crush tests when they first poured it. So the strength of the concrete is not an issue, it's this falling of the surface,
Yeah, so it will test the air content, the water content, moisture content, and so it could be a lack of moisture that's causing this falling, so that would give that information, but you're right, the strength tests all passed.
yes. And if they find out why it's falling, they say, oh, it's defective somehow, I mean.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is Chris.
We're just gonna replace it, aren't we?
Go ahead, Chris.
So my understanding, what they're doing is trying to pass the project is not acceptable from our standpoint, even though the concrete did pass strength testing, as you pointed out. The project's not acceptable from for another multitude of reasons, to do with the workmanship. So we have indicated that it's not acceptable. I believe Q&D and their concrete supplier are kind of hashing out amongst themselves, and we're giving them a little latitude to do that. But my presumption will be if they come back and the concrete is not found to be acceptable for the reasons that Alicia listed there with air content and durability of the rock and so on and so forth, then Q&D is going to put some pressure on the supplier to make it right. Ultimately, it's Q&D's responsibility regardless. So our stance has been to kind of let this process play out a little bit, understanding that what we have right now is not an acceptable product, and we expect action from Q&D at some point, but we're giving them a little bit of leeway to see what they can do on their end.
So a little bit of leeway and it's gonna result in the airport not having that ramp for 2 years.
No.
already, haven't.
No, yeah,
For a year.
It's gonna be,
right,
They're not gonna do it this year.
like,
yeah, we haven't discussed schedules or anything with QND at this point, but, we will, certainly understand it's of utmost importance. We will continue to put pressure on QND. They have provided somewhat regular updates, so we will continue keeping the pressure on them to reach some resolution.
Is there anything in the contract or the bid that said that this would, the warranty's good for this long, but anything has to be resolved within a certain amount of time?
No, the only onus on the city is to identify problems with workmanship within the 1-year warranty period, which we have done.
But
And
there's
so
no stipulation
ultimately,
that they-
if QND does not follow through on a fix for it, we are protected by the payment bond, the performance bond on the project. It's in the amount of the original contract to get the project remedied through the QND's surety company.
Is there a time limit on that? I mean, for how fast they have to remedy the situation? Cause from the start of the
Like
project,
November.
then almost, October will be a year and a half
no,
since it
November,
started.
November when it was poured,
November was a year for the warranty.
for the warranty.
Well, yeah, it started April of 2022 is my point, and we really haven't been able to use it since it started.
So the only time frames spelled out within the payment and performance bond is just reaction timeframes. There's nothing in there that stipulates when the actual work needs to be completed by, any remedial work needs to be completed by. There was initial contract period, which Q&D failed to meet, and they were, there were some liquidated damages imposed on them because of them failing to meet the original contract period. But the actual performance of any remedial work, there is nothing in the contract that lays that out or requires a certain time frame.
Maybe we should put that in there next time.
Except, Chris, there has to be at some point a reasonable expectation that work would be complete. I mean, they can't wait until they can use us as a filler job, right? I mean, at some point, we could just say, there's got to be.
Correct.
Yeah.
I agree. So again, go back to and we have not been provided this specifically, but based on my experience, what's happening right now is Q&D and the supplier are at odds with each other, the concrete supplier at odds with each other. We've been given some updates on timeframes. We're at the 6-week mark as Alicia indicated. So that has to be resolved in the near future, certainly understood, and we will continue to push on them to ultimately follow through on fixing the problems.
All right, appreciate it.
Reconstruct a heavy ramp design. Anything going on that, other than it's already been,
Yeah, the design report was submitted and approved by the FAA. I believe Armstrong's currently working on the final design package.
Correct, yeah, we've presented our preliminary concept, if you will, for the pavement section and the scope of the footprint of the project, and the FAA approved that, so we're continuing to work behind the scenes on putting together that bid package. And once that, with that, the deliverables would be a bid set essentially with construction plans, contract docs, and a full design report. And then we'll talk timing of bidding and stuff like that moving forward.
About the BLM portion of that.
So after writing this report this week, I did get an email from the BLM, and they would like to schedule a meeting to go over the task order one more time. So I'm just working with them to figure out a good time to have that meeting again.
What is the task order?
It's the scope, so similar to the signage project that was on here, it's Armstrong's proposed scope of work for that BLM expansion project.
And then, at some point, would it be Armstrong doing the design for that?
Yes.
doing that with BLM, yeah.
But the whole project can't proceed until the whole project is designed.
Our heavy apron can be designed, and then it's in 2 phases, right? Yeah. And, BLM's expansion project, they can be designed separately but coordinating so that they work together. But they don't have to be constructed at the same time, but it does make sense to do it at the same time, so you're not paying double for the contractor to mobilize and all of that.
Which would be great if we could use that as leverage to do at least half of our heavy ramp.
Yeah, it does provide good leverage with the FAA for them to release funding if we say we have a $2.5 million project right next door that's 100% funded by the BLM, and we'd like to do the two together.
That would be positive.
Would be great.
Yeah. The loom site, they're still doing the CDL classes or no?
They are, yeah, they've been really successful. I know the city's had 3, I think, get their CDLs. The county's had at least 1. It's open to private businesses as well. I know that's been helpful for private business. There's a Class B class that's going to begin in September and a Class A class in October. So they are successful and they are continuing.
Do they have somebody to do testing on site, or do they still have to go to Alcoa?
I believe they're testing here in Winnemucca, but it's not on site. I think it's, I don't know, somewhere out by the DMV maybe, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I think.
I just always heard that's a big bottleneck is the test is.
And it sounded like they were testing here, and they go out with a truck, and then normally on a Friday, and then we'll come back with it later that afternoon. I was told that was for testing.
Didn't know they went well. Yeah.
The guys that got it.
It went well.
Does BLM have a lease with you guys as well?
BLM does, yeah. Right now, there's actually 3 separate leases, but with the expansion project, we're trying to combine at least 2 of them.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Does the CDL school have a lease?
They do not, they're just using the loom site.
Natasha, what do you have on nav aids?
Nav aids are pretty much the same as last time. Have we heard anything about the decommissioning?
I've not got another extension, so I assume it's
The 16th, I believe, is
Yeah,
what
it's
they
coming
said
up.
of this month, is when the VOR is supposed to be decommissioned. So pending hearing anything else, it will be officially decommissioned. I mean, it's still off, so it's kind of irrelevant. I have not heard anything from Jamie or anybody with the FAA with the new DME. So I'm not 100% sure what they're doing with that. I knew they were testing, but they said they were going to do some flight testing, and I have not seen them since, I think, April.
No, there was some flight testing going on the other day when I was out there.
Oh, with the DME?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
that
great
was
then.
a couple Fridays ago.
Okay, did you see anybody
They didn't
over at that
land, they
new
were
site?
doing low approaches and
Okay, and that,
coming out.
I believe that was for our normal instrument reviews that we get every year.
Flight check.
This will be separate for working with that DME equipment, so somebody's supposed to be on site here, checking all the readouts.
Oh, on the ground.
On the ground in their new little building that they have, and I have not heard anything about them doing that yet. She said that they'd coordinate with me for that, and so I haven't, but I will follow up with her and kind of see where that's at, or if they decided to do it remotely, or however they did that.
What about lights? Have the runway lights been working reliably?
They have been, yes. Ever since we got the main power fixed, I have not had any issues with our lighting. I haven't seen Cam either though.
Is there a testing system in that notifies you if something's out, or you just gotta do it by
You just have to do it.
trial and error?
So, and Center is really good. They call me if somebody has any issues, and I'll just run over and grab the radio. And normally I try to click it first, cause I've had some people, for whatever reason, it didn't go on for, and then I've just clicked it. Otherwise I just head straight out there and I turn it on, to where it's not automatically on, it's just always on. So I'll do that until they
land and leave if they're going to, and then figure out what's going on afterwards. But before, it was a circuit breaker that would pop, and that's why I didn't know that it was the main power, is because there was actually two different circuit breakers that were popping. And that's why they thought they might have to do them, running the lines, and they start with like quartering the airport and then going in sections like that. So Cam was worried how expensive it was going to get, but it ended up just being that main power, so.
That kinda took care of your fixed base operator report too, didn't it?
Yeah. Other thing with that, we have been working on the weeds nonstop. And so I know that Tom has mentioned possibly getting a brush hog out there. I would really, really, really appreciate that. It's just too much for the FBO even using one of the city's lawnmowers, and they're both down right now because we're mowing sagebrush and not grass. And so, it's been near impossible, to keep up this year. I know there are weeds growing everywhere, but even the chemical that we have, it's like fertilizer. It is not killing them. I've talked to Ken, and I've talked to a couple of the city guys, and they keep bringing me the same stuff. So I don't know if there's something else we can do or a better plan. I know Carwill keeps their weeds down pretty good, so I don't know what they're using, but
You gotta ask them what they're using.
that's what I'm going to do, cause I don't know, we need like
Diesel fuel.
Kill or something. What?
You guys
I
said
said
something?
they're using diesel fuel.
Don't tell you, yeah.
But, that's just a side note, we've had a really hard time keeping up this year, and so I am looking for possible ideas of things that we can do better next year, or possibly help with for the remainder of the year.
Mr. Chair, as far as the brush hogs are concerned, when Armstrong was here, we took congregation out there, we looked at the runways, we looked at sagebrush, we looked at the weeds. And a brush hog is gonna be needed to get us back, what I would call in compliance to an airport. Because our sides are dangerous and different stuff, and we could also do a lot more with it. So I found two, sitting in the county yard. So I would ask the city and the county to find some operators, get those things running, and get some work done. Please.
That would be awesome.
Natasha, you had mentioned that, talking with Carol Lynn about a fire break around the,
Yeah, Carol Lynn had mentioned, there are some grants out there right now for emergency services, and one of the things she'd been looking into is making, or getting a grant so that they can make fire breaks. And we talked about the fire that had went through, 2019? That was, from the west to the east, and went through really quickly through the airport. And talked about putting in these fire breaks. I guess they have to be 16 feet according to the regulation wide. And so we talked about the possibility of doing it inside the outer fence for the airport, and that will also help with having a road. But obviously the airport wouldn't be the only place that there'd be fire breaks. And so she was gonna kind of look and see how else they could protect the different communities that are in the valley, I guess, around the airport. Even just putting one around the outside of the airport, I think would help a lot for the eastern residents. And I guess the western ones, but there's not a lot over there right now, because we are backed up directly behind their property.
It would also give if you do have a fire, you give the firemen a chance to get out there, because they can't go out through this heavy brush.
Yeah.
You know, they could, and we could design it so that, you know, they could get into areas so that they could fight a fire a lot quicker.
That's what we were talking about, around the fence line, yeah. Civil Air Patrol, the commander will try and make his presentation with the cadet about the drones at the next airport board meeting. That's all I got on Civil Air Patrol. With that being said, I would like to open it up to public comment. We can try and do it for 3 minutes. If we have some more public comment, I'd like to entertain that.
Sorry, I don't move as fast as I used to. Chairs are not comfortable.
I didn't forget you.
I appreciate that. I wasn't going away. You didn't even smile. Just saying.
It's all good.
So I know that the overall goal, and I have all these things that I'd like to say, but the goal here is to make the airport financially able to function without FAA and state funding. That's the whole goal and the reason why we take on these added projects. Is that right? Aside for the rail spur, I'm talking about the rail spur.
That's one of the reasons. It's one of our grant assurances also.
I guess I misunderstood that.
One of our FAA grant assurances is that we do our best to, create revenue streams for the airport.
But you're doing the classes at the Google Loon site and they're just using that without any income.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so there's that. So I was looking at the $5,700 that you would accumulate monthly over 12 months for this is the lease for lithium. Would be $68,400 annually. And over 46 years would be $3,146,400. Over 46 years for this lease. That is not even 2 years of federal funding from the FAA if you're not compliant. Correct? Should be pretty close.
Yeah, depending on what projects we do, it could be close.
So I don't think it's worth not just the risk to the citizens, but our airport is vital to this community, and I'm not saying that just lightly. Not being originally from Nevada, I have never seen fire move so quickly, ever, in my life. And I grew up in Montana originally, and there's even more underbrush and grass and all those things in lieu of my 4 minutes or 3 minutes that we're trying to keep it short. I've never seen fire move like it does here, and it scares me that without the availability of our airport to control the weeds by spraying, to continue to crop dust, to fight the fires. I mean, our community has to have this airport. There's no way that we can survive a fire season without it. I'm just sold. Also, having said that, trying to keep things very quickly. I'm sorry I'm bouncing all over the place. But I was looking at your Winnemucca Municipal Airport Master Plan. That's 2005, you do it every 20 years, is good for until 2025, and I'm looking at the back of it, that all residents that are within close proximity to the airport should be provided paperwork for their homes, that you live near an airport and you should be following these guidelines. You shouldn't plant trees this high, these are your responsibilities as a homeowner. I have never seen that. And like I told you before, I'm doing my best to not just come here off the cuff and make trouble. It's not the plan. I'm not opposed to this project. I think lithium has a great thing going. I think we need the batteries. Who knows how long the lithium battery fad will last for. They're already moving on to sodium ion batteries. So having said all those things, I just think this isn't the best location because I think the risk is too great. There's an elementary school in close proximity. I mean, we've talked about this, you guys know all the things, that there's just, it's very close to residential areas that should have honestly never been allowed within the airport buffer zone. And since they were, and mistakes were made, Now I feel like there's some real responsibilities to help protect us since we've invested in those properties as well. Or Lithium can come in and buy us out. But as our airport board and to protect our airport, I'm asking you first to make sure that this doesn't happen there because of the risk that it causes to the viability and functionality and funding potential to the airport. And I've tried honestly to be very diligent and do my homework. I did file a formal complaint with the FAA. I've been working with Alicia and trying to get through some of those questions because I couldn't get questions answered without that. And it wouldn't have gone that direction if there had been transparency. You guys have been, not maybe you guys, but some people have been working on this for over 20 years. I'm pretty sure that's what the mayor said. But I bought my house 6 years ago and was never told anything about it. And I feel like there's, and we were told to move during the last meeting by the mayor. So short of calling this the Stinky Stone Project, which I've refrained from doing, I think that there's some real liabilities and respect issues that we have to take care of each other. This isn't even a good neighbor policy. We're people, we're messy, we have accidents, we spill, we have fires. It's not if it happens, it's going to happen. There are refineries that catch fire, and with respect to Lithium, I know they know what they're doing. I know that they're working on the safety features and doing all of those things, and I've tried to do my part by being a very educated homeowner. Am I a scientist? No. I am a taxpayer though, and I do have a vote. And I'm asking you to help me protect our airport. I'm asking you to help me make sure that wherever this is built, that it's in the best possible place for the chemicals they plan on using. That's what I'm asking, is for you guys to help me protect the airport and don't let it happen here. I even called Lithium and said, hey, I'll help you look for the next best place. Where would be the next best place? And all I got from Tim Crowley was, hey, we want to be here at the airport. Now where our feet are set in stone, this is what we want. Well, he backed me into a bit of a corner because I'm trying to be flexible and transparent in what you're planning on doing to my home and my property value is already tanked. I couldn't sell it and get out of it right now if I wanted to. That's not fair, and it's not to bring it against the law, but we're supposed to be looking out for each other. It would be like me having a meth lab at my house saying, hey, I'm zoned for it because I'm commercial and residential. Well, the law applies to everybody, and the zoning is airport industrial, is light industrial. Even Cyanco is M1, and they've had to go through all of the appropriate testing, as you know. Same with the other mines, to ship chemical in and out and the process that they have to do. This particular style of mining, I'm not gonna call it strip mining or make a name for it, because I don't know the ins and outs, I just know it's different. And the other mines here have had to jump through a lot of hoops to get things done the way they should be done. And so I'm concerned about a lease agreement that is in the best interest of the city, is not in the best interest of our neighborhood and our residents that live there. So I'm just asking you to protect this. And I really appreciate that. Do you have questions for me? Is there anything I can do? I've offered to be part of the citizens group, to help arrange a way to communicate clearly, to be a liaison for that. I've approached emergency services and offered my assistance. I was a dispatcher for years. I used to be the lady that got the phone call when all the crap went to pot.
I had one question at the very beginning. You're assuming that if we take the lease, we're not gonna get any FAA grants. You're matching the
No.
30, so what are you saying that?
I'm saying,
If we support our airport by putting that money back into the airport, you believe the FAA will what will you
I
said?
don't believe anything. I filed a complaint to get some answers. 'Cause I
So
couldn't
your
get
comment
answers from
was
anybody else.
your comment was we wouldn't get the funding, we would lose the
FAA
I think
funding?
she was just
I'm
comparing the
saying-
dollar amount.
I'm saying the dollar amounts, that
Oh,
this
I
is,
see what you're saying.
Okay,
that
thank you.
they're our largest contributor, and yet have other opportunities to make money, but we're not seizing the moment and making money there by giving away the use of the land already. If we're about making money, then let's buckle down and make some money.
I see,
I
okay,
see what you're saying.
thank you.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank
Anybody else have any more comments? Thank you for your
Thank
input there.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm sorry if I went over 4 minutes, so I sure tried. Good luck.
I'll keep it real simple. I, Christina Kennison, do formally request that the Humboldt County Winnemucca Airport Board put on the agenda for discussion and possible vote for the airport board to request legal opinion on the matters concerning the ownership, property, authority, and liability of the airport board, from the Nevada Attorney General's office.
Okay. Thanks for that comment.
Please make sure that gets on the
I'll
agenda.
put that, I'll give that, talk to the airport manager about that, put that on the agenda. Do we have any other comments inside the building? Armstrong, folks, do you have any comments for the board?
Nothing further from our end.
Okay,
No, Mr. Chairman.
if there's nothing else, then we will adjourn.
When's the next meeting?
It will be the second Monday in September, which is, yeah, the 11th.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing from you.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate your approach.
I'm trying. I'm not, I would tell Tim that I would be willing to look in other avenues. Well, I even visited with another fellow that said it would be 100,000 or 100 mil, maybe it's 100 million. I don't have my notes in front of me either, about a straight rail to the mine. So I'm just wondering if at the time.
It's not just the price though.
It's permitting.
Yeah, see if it's real. It would be the longest rail spur in the United States.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull this right between your jeans.
Believe it or not, all three of them you see around the country built 50 years ago.
Would it separate the chemical, would it separate the chemical function of that rail if you built it independently, wouldn't it separate it from a lot of